it is not, either because the revenues are a little bit lower or the risks are perceived to be a bit higher. This is then where blended financing structures come in and play a very important role. How can one combine catalytic, philanthropic, and public capital as maybe a first loss layer or a concessional layer, and through that crowd in senior tranches from private financiers? Another really important question to ask is who's aiming to raise this capital? Is it a sovereign? Is it a large corporation? Is it an earlier stage enterprise or an SME? And the type of financial instrument that is most applicable will very much depend on that issue or need. You've got green or blue bonds that work very well for large corporations or sovereigns and are a great opportunity to combine and aggregate smaller initiatives into one structure. You've got sustainability-linked loans and bonds that increase the terms, the financial terms, by tying them to sustainability outcomes. And the more you achieve in terms of sustainability objectives, the lower your cost of capital. But if you're looking more at a sort of early stage enterprise, the types of instruments are very different. Here you'd rather look at venture capital, maybe a bit of private equity, and technical assistance financing plays a core role to help these enterprises move along on the maturity curve. So the principle really is, let us start with the business case and the context, and based on that then define what instrument is best suited. However, I also want to emphasize that this focus on instruments is not enough. And I had a really interesting conversation with Jane, who's sitting in the corner yesterday over lunch, who brought up this metaphor, which I thought is really appealing, that finance is like water. It takes the path of least resistance. And there's so many factors that feed into this path of least resistance. And we've heard it here before, it's policy, it's data, it's capacity building, all of that shapes this path. And one of the issues that was already mentioned, for example, is just the vast scale of global harmful subsidies that, depending on what source you look at, are about 1.7 trillion to 7 trillion year on year. That very much forges a path into the wrong areas. So repurposing some of these is a very, very critical low-hanging fruit. Other levers that governments can play are linked to guarantees, incentives, disclosure requirements. We've heard quite a lot about this. But I think now, as we think about how we can turn this G20 momentum into a lasting legacy on the bioeconomy and how we really scale financing, we really need to adopt this systems level perspective of how do we reshape this path. And here it's really our strong conviction that success will not come from any single initiative, any single project, any single policy, capacity building effort or data effort, but it very much requires this concentrated effort. And that brings me to the Bioeconomy Financing Hub for Africa, which really aims to do just that. And for those who've heard about this before, I apologize. This will be a little bit repetitive, but I'm also aware that there are other people in this room here who are not yet as familiar with the initiative. So the Bioeconomy Financing Hub is being established as an independent legacy initiative, closely co-created with the G20 Bioeconomy Steering Committee, with the core objective really now to take this momentum to create a lasting financial legacy, combining different and bringing together different stakeholders already active in the space, not aiming to replicate, but really aiming to boost exciting existing developments, fill strategic gaps, and bring together this orchestrated ecosystem, launching systematic programs across policy enablement, but specifically policy enablement for financial flows, capacity building on an institutional and individual level, pipeline generation and investment catalyzation, working both to support enterprises to move along in the maturity curve, as well as looking at, depending on the context, what financial instruments can be deployed. And last but not least, data and metrics, not creating nude metrics. We definitely have enough of those, but working with the private sector On the one hand, by socializing existing data sets, bridging this divide, as well as working on a more concrete set of metrics that are actionable. The North Star of this initiative is to increase the value capture of the bioeconomy on the continent from what I quoted at the beginning of less than 10% today to hopefully about 50. But much more than a number, the vision really is to create this platform that brings stakeholders together, governments, investors, financial institutions, innovators. As we've already heard on this panel, there's so many exciting initiatives already along on the way. And to grow Africa's bioeconomy as a driver of prosperity and sustainability. And let me just close with a request for partnership, and we've heard it before, and it's a common theme. The hub now moves into really the shift of going from an idea into implementation, and as we heard yesterday, a key part of that will be systematic stakeholder engagement processes. We'll have systematic interviews, roundtables. So we sincerely welcome all of you to become involved, to reach out, to shape this initiative together with us. And we're very happy to share more details one-on-one throughout the rest of the day and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much there, Teresa and Julie. Sorry about that, Teresa. So just touching on that point, Teresa, on currently the status quo is that the sector is contributing to just 10% of the supply and innovation of bioeconomy products and services. I just want to turn to my right. Mr. Matibe is a champion for the National Biodiversity Economy Strategy and has worked quite closely with the team behind the SADC wildlife economy. Mr. Matibe, just very quickly, the stats behind SADC and South Africa's vision from what can I say, our KPIs, our targets from a job creation, growing the sector, and the likes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, moderator. And I think it's a very important question because in South Africa we have a very unique approach to bioeconomy, where we've allowed a situation where we've got a bioeconomy that focuses on innovation, technology, industry, of course, industrialization, but a dedicated focus also on the biodiversity itself. And therefore, if you look, for instance, in the biodiversity part of the bioeconomy of South Africa, you have got 5 key pillars of that focus before I go to statistics. One is that there is a clear focus on ecotourism, on the biodiversity economy. Ecotourism generates 27.7 billion to the economy of the Republic and appoints and sustain about 91,000 jobs. Now, and the billion I'm talking about, it's not in US dollars, it's in the South African rands, so that we distinguish. That is the ecotourism part. And as you know, tourism in totality in South Africa generates about 216 billion, support 1.5 million jobs in the Republic. And it's coming out of 8.5 million visitors who generate 95 billion South African. So about 37.4 domestic trips that then contribute about 121 billion South African rands. So altogether, you're talking about 216 billion. And I'm emphasizing that because when you go to the second pillar, which is sustainable consumption and beneficiation of game, it's an area which is linked to extractive use of resources. Out of that space of extractive use, you have got 200,000 traditional health practitioners that are servicing 27 million South Africans through traditional medicines services. So that is the work that is done by our traditional health practitioners. But if you look at the fishing industry employs 27,000 people and generates between 6 and 8 billion to the economy. So that is in the extractive use. Hunting alone, just the recent research done by one of the professors from Northwest University, Piet van der Merwe and Professor Seyman, they are indicating that initially we used to calculate hunting to be around 20 billion, but actually, when you look at the entire value chain, it's about 44 billion just from hunting alone to the economy of the Republic. Now, when you go to the bioprospecting, biotrade, and I'm sure the statistics are clear, if you look at what the ALU school has done, they've managed to delineate between those information, those statistics that are generated from animal derivatives or whatever, but also from plants. And they are able to distinguish. So all I'm trying to say is that the approach that we took then allows us to put an intricate focus on the base, which is the actual resources, while at the same time promoting innovation, putting innovation, a layer of innovation, industrialization, as well as technology. That's why the two departments work seamlessly together to be able to, yeah. But otherwise, overall, we are supporting 1.5 million jobs as this economies, as the bioeconomy of the Republic, and not only 1.5, but also at the same time contributing 8.3% to the GDP. Thank you.
Thank you so much there, Mr. Matibe. Outstanding summary of the status quo from facts and figures. So Teresa, I'm really hoping that we made a compelling case to be able to support the Finance Hub initiative in moving the needle from 10% to 50%. Thank you. So I'm going to turn to the last panel member, my dear colleague, Ms. Marta Gomez, to talk to the areas of partnerships, monitoring and evaluation to ensure sustainability.
Thank you. Can you hear me well? Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm the only one with the slides, but maybe it's good to just show a couple of QR codes and maybe I stand up. Yeah, on the partnerships and a particular partnership we are creating at FAO. My colleague Lev Neretin, the lead on bioeconomy at the FAO. We are from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, sister agency of UNDP, UNEP, etc. So he will talk about it, but I will give a little bit of a glimpse on why partnerships are important also for metrics, harmonization a little bit of what are we measuring, but also how are we monitoring the sustainability or the performance of the bioeconomy. Because yes, a number of job sectors, included or not in the GDP or the contribution of the bioeconomy to the GDP is one of the metrics, and maybe having some transparency on how each of the countries are doing it is great. But there is much more. There is all the sustainability, the social aspects. Well, you also mentioned indigenous communities, but environment, etc. So having all these things into consideration and in a little bit of a harmonized way is quite difficult. But I will try. And last mentioned on the sustainability of agri-food systems and forestry and fisheries. That's maybe where there is a little bit more data. We have FAOstat, and our database that I will show now includes all this data. So at least on the production part, sustainability could be a little bit traced out, but not maybe throughout the value chain, and that's the issue maybe. Okay, next slide. I think I will just pass quick. Yeah, I will start by saying that we work a lot on policies and strategies of the bioeconomy over the last year, almost 10 years. But last year, with the G20 presidency of Brazil, and thank you for inviting FAO to be part of it, we learned a lot. And throughout this journey, we created a first publication where we a little bit positioned the bioeconomy in this new momentum and what was happening. And I just want to mention the Appendix 4. There is much more inside there, but this appendix is a summary of how every existing bioeconomy strategy is monitoring its development. And sometimes within the strategy, or sometimes there is a parallel effort, but an overview of how countries were monitoring the bioeconomy, countries with a bioeconomy strategy, of course. So that was the first attempt, and then, next slide, please. Sorry. This year, with the one of the focus areas of the South African presidency on metrics and indicators, we expanded that work. We were already developing a database or a compilation of FAO START indicators, World Bank indicators, Common Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework indicators, SDG indicators, etc. So all these kind of open access databases that are out there, and also taking a look at the certifications or how also private sector is looking at metrics, so to compile indicators and then classify them on relevant to the bioeconomy, or in which level are they relevant? Are they relevant at policy level or at value chain assessment level, etc. And then also categorizing them in the high-level principles of the bioeconomy of the G20. So kind of understanding what can fit where. So we presented that publication in May to all of you, and you commented, and then we refined it a lot and just published it last week, and I will made available some QR codes for you. We cannot print anymore in FAO, but we can print this QR code card, so I have some for you. But yeah, so you already know this publication, but in short, we mapped all these more than 4,000 indicators, but not all of them are relevant, and all of them have data behind, or so there is this classification on the indicators, and also how countries can select those that are more relevant. Next slide, please. This selection that countries can make is based on their objectives, for example, that they want to achieve, social, environmental. Also, if they want to track progress towards the high-level principles, some of them, all of them, which levels are they looking at, and then if maybe they want to use tier 1 data, it means there is available data for many countries and many sectors out there, so they can compare their monitoring. So we have these kind of options, and countries can select from there. We have some recommendations, like for example, to always have at least a couple of indicators, at least for social, another 2 for economic, another 2 for environmental, another 2 for governance, for example. So they are only recommendations, but somehow we believe this provides an overall picture. Next slide, please. Next slide. In the publication, we also made a case study of the South African strategy. Yeah, next slide, sorry. Sorry. And we looked at the, it's just a very theoretical case study, but we look at the bioeconomy strategy of South Africa and also the biodiversity strategy. So we look at which objectives were in common, what the country may want to look at. That's what Julie mentioned, maybe that monitors something that you already have data, and also where you are aiming towards, and that's why strategies are important. And doing, with that in mind, taking it from the strategies, we do this prioritization approach, all these steps. And we provide that example in the publication, so it's just a way to show how can it be used. But doesn't matter. I think it was my last slide. It was just to show you a screenshot of the database. And another way to use it is also in projects and finance. And just to complement what the colleagues have said, there is also this vertical funds, the GEF, Global Environmental Facility, you mentioned presently, and also the Green Climate Fund and others. So we are working with them a lot. we are working on bioeconomy specific projects with UNDP on tourism and with UNEP on textiles. So to really understand the bioeconomy metrics within these projects, because these vertical funds ask us, okay, what are the benefits of your bioeconomy intervention? So you can call it bioeconomy, you can do policy, but we need to report on these projects' advancement. So maybe also inviting to look at these very first steps on how to report these bioeconomy benefits to the vertical funds. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marta. That was very informative, short, sharp, and sweet. But for me, an important takeaway is the focus on streamlining the different, data efforts, database efforts, because indeed, we've got to look at it from what's happening from public sector, NGOs, as well as private sector. There's a very big drive on data pooling to be able to deliver on the ESG and everything else. So thank you so much. So members, I know that we are not doing the best for time, but I'm sure that we all are enjoying the dialogue and discussions that are unfolding. So I'm going to take on the question, comments part of this plenary, making it shorter, especially since for the G20 members, we have a slot later this afternoon for feedback and comments. So I'm going to keep it short, but starting off this point where I'm opening the floor to call upon our dear colleague from the African Union, Auda NEPAD, Mr. Kerakio Tobiko. Also, like our program director, my heartfelt apologies if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but we are a family, so I'm hoping that we get to learn all the different ways of embracing the African languages. Mr. Tobiko is the senior advisor to the CEO of Auda NEPAD. I also like to refer to him as Your Excellency, because Mr. Tobiko is also the former Deputy Minister of Environment for the government of Kenya. Over to you, His Excellency Tobiko.
Thank you so very much, facilitator. And yes, now the remarks, our remarks will be delivered by my colleague, who is really the expert on the subject. I am her intern, and I'm enjoying it really. So Dr. Bernice McLean, yes, but just before she delivers the 2-minute remarks on behalf of our organization, let me say 2 points really. Firstly, I don't see any contradiction between bioeconomy or biodiversity economy and nature positive growth and development. I don't think there is really a contradiction. And I see no reason why we should seem to be apologetic about it. And even for my friend Mr. Matibe's grandchildren, they will understand. Protect nature, use nature well, and nature will protect you similarly. Destroy nature, and nature is merciless. Nature will destroy you. So I think we need to be open about this. There is no contradiction at all in my to develop our Africa's bioeconomy, but also ensure that Africa and indeed the rest of the world remains nature positive. That's the first point. And secondly, this is not new for Africa. Actually, it's not new even for our own traditional and indigenous communities. Methodologies must have changed and so on, and methods and so on and so forth, but they're not new. I mean, for Africa, we have a number of instruments and policy frameworks that really implicate bioeconomy. And a number of them, I'm sure, are already too well known for today. The recently adopted AU Circular Economy Action Plan It's the newest. It talks about circularity in bioeconomy. So it's nothing new for Africa. The African Biodiversity, Bioenergy Policy Framework and Guideline of 2013, again talks about bioeconomy. AU Blue Economy Strategy, AU Climate and Resilient Development Strategy, and AUDA-NEPAD genome editing, and my colleague here, I think can speak a lot about it. It's basically on that, and AUDA-NEPAD working with the EU high-level panel on emerging technologies. In the East African region, there's actually a strategy, the East African Community Regional Bioeconomy Strategy of 2021-2031. So let's not really seem like we are creating something new for Africa, right? Let's talk about how do we enhance, okay? How do we enhance it? How do we scale it up? And I like our colleague from Brazil that this subject now would be given due space at COP30. In the negotiations, for, particularly on Article 6.4 in the Paris Agreement, the issue of carbon market, you get a distinct feeling that we seem to be moving more away from nature-based solutions and focusing our investment in technology-based, right? And I like what he said. They are actually nature infrastructure. So I think we need to also speak about nature-based solutions as part of the critical aspect of this. And finally, as you know, our role as AUDA-NEPAD, before I give my colleague, I think I've stolen her time, we are the entity that does the implementation of priority projects. We coordinate and convene member states and regional economic blocks. We build capacities, we do policy harmonization, and so on and so forth. So if there is, and here there is absolutely no competition between us and our colleagues at AUC. We are brothers and sisters. So and I'm sure this is a confirmation we're going to put on record, we would be more than happy to work with you and all the partners here to ensure that then we escalate and move this into the next level. And let me just then ask my colleague, although I'm sure I've taken more from her mouth, to deliver 2 minutes for the record. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Allow me to stay seated so that I will not so eloquently give the address on behalf of NEPAD. So, thank you, sir. So good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This dialogue that we hear for the past day and the next day is purposed to translate Africa's bioeconomy promise into a shared legacy through a focused roadmap and the partnerships to deliver it. As my colleague has just mentioned, Africa is ready to lead. We have existing initiatives and we would like to build on those. So coming from the second Africa Climate Summit that happened last week, nature-based solutions have been recognized as an integral pillar of the summit's declaration. This summit scoped the segment by addressing 3 key aspects. I'll briefly touch on them: the risk of climate scenarios to Africa's biodiversity conservation, as we heard yesterday, the need for mainstreaming of nature-based solutions in country-based governance mechanisms to highlight the sector as a national priority, and third, the need for knowledge-sharing platform to advance the sector collaboratively. This dialogue is taking place at a perfectly opportune time by providing a means to catalyze implementation of the declaration of the Climate Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Congo Basin to our arid desert landscapes to our most remote island states, Africa's biological wealth can drive regional integration, foster innovation, create jobs, and build resilience. But only if we organize around delivery, effective coordination, proper valuation and value addition of Africa's natural assets, and a non-negotiable respect for Africa's natural heritage and indigenous knowledge. AUDA, as part of the African Union, endorses the Global Bioeconomy Implementation Platform, We also endorse an African legacy bioeconomy initiative that would translate the G20's 10 high-level principles into measurable progress on the continent. This must be anchored in equity, in science-based metrics, and enabling trade and finance. So the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework provides clear outcomes on restoration, on protection, and sustainable use. And it is critically important that every platform-supported project should be traceable to those targets. We therefore insist that each supported project must demonstrate the GBF alignment and documented access and benefit sharing compliance from the outset. Our commitments should rest on 3 main pillars: local value addition, to build prosperity in African communities and foster private sector development, for instance through biopharmaceuticals from indigenous plants, bio-based materials, and regenerative agri-inputs. The second is diffusion, to accelerate knowledge exchange and technology transfer so that innovations reach small-scale value chain actors, rural entrepreneurs, and emerging scientists on the continent. And the third, on fairness, to ensure real benefit sharing, technology partnerships, and capacity building that are grounded in the Nagoya Protocol and respect for indigenous and local knowledge. Additionally, we propose the Platform's Africa window to institutionalize these principles, a common metrics dashboard by 2026, a blended finance hub that rewards biodiversity and inclusion outcomes, and improved market access under the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement for bio-based products with trusted sustainability and access and benefit sharing credentials. The effective implementation of these will require strong governance structures. These must be based on coordinated policy frameworks at the global, continental, regional, and national levels, and a comprehensive monitoring mechanism. Allow me to conclude to say that in line with the African Union Development Agency's continental capacity building, convening, and coordinating mandate, we stand ready to work with the South African government, with UNEP and other partners to translate the outcomes of this dialogue and to deliver a joint work plan that is grounded on global and continental priorities. We invite G20 partners to co-invest in a first wave of catalytic actions, and as others have emphasized, we must move from pilot initiatives to scale. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for your support to our dear colleagues, our family from Outer NEPAD. Before I close, I'd also like to acknowledge we have amongst us the resident representative from the United Nations Development Programme, Mr. Maxwell Gomera, one of my leaders. Mr. Gomera, would like to acknowledge you. Thank you for joining us today. But I don't want to steal your thunder. I know that you comprise today's meeting where you will be specific talking to UN support for the global bioeconomy development. But thank you for joining us, and we look forward to that talk later on today. Thank you. So dear colleagues, members, esteemed guests, I'm going to say and wrap up by saying, let's leave this dialogue with a renewed commitment to scale innovation, strengthen partnerships, and build a bioeconomy legacy that reflects the G20's unique strengths and contributes meaningfully to global sustainability. My colleague, Dr. Sue Sneeman, mentioned earlier, and it's something that I also keep very close to my heart, hence facilitating us coming together this morning. And you made mention about the African proverb, if you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, let's walk together. Thank you, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, after such an excellent panel, I cannot add anything more. Thank you very much, Prashanti, and thank you, esteemed panelists, for speaking to us so passionately this morning. Lots of takeaways, lots of areas to drill deeper into, and quite an exciting moment for Africa. Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. We now need to close. I remember Ben telling us we need to get to the bus because we have a big agenda today. So what I want to do is ask Madame Flora to come close for us, 5 minutes. Don't worry, Ben, promise you we will be seated on time. Thank you very much, and Madame Flora, looking forward to hearing your closing remarks. And as we do that, also just thanking Prashanti and the team for putting this together. Thank you for making this work out as well as it has. We don't take it for granted. And for all of you. So you won't see me again. We'll see each other at the CSIR, but welcome.
Thank you very much, Doreen. Before I say something, I just ask Max just to give some reflections. He's an African that thinks on his feet, so I know he's going to say something that we all are going to take home.
What Flora means is she wants to find out if I was paying attention. I'm not sure I can do justice to this, but colleagues, good morning, and fantastic to see us continuing with the movement. The issues that you're discussing today are not issues that we have started to discuss this year. These are issues that I remember for as long as I've been working in this sector, but I'm also recognizing the progress, which is fantastic. And I think getting together, not just as the African group who are interested in this, but bringing a global community within the G20, I think will make us move forward together. Picture this. About 25% of the water that flows into Gauteng, the area that you are in and broader, is coming from a place called the Vaal somewhere. The Limpopo contributes a little bit of that water as well. But it is also in these places where you find that unemployment is quite high. In some areas, about 60%. But you also find in these areas that poverty is still hitting you in the face. Now, how have we got to this place where people who are living with resources that are so crucial to our existence also happen to be the poorest amongst us? That tells you there's a failure somewhere. And that failure is something that we can deal with. And I'm glad that with the bioeconomy, we're beginning to look at it. How do we use the natural asset classes that we have to create opportunities for these people to make a better life for themselves? How do we ensure that water, for example, we talked about blue bonds somewhere, I think it was Doreen who referred to blue bonds. How do we create equity trusts? How do we make sure that communities have got equity in the water, and we can change the prospects for communities? We've got the instruments. Our economies work on instruments that have worked for generations, for centuries. We've just not brought them into the biodiversity sector. Whether the limitation is ideological or the limitation is something else, I think we can no longer continue to sustain a situation where people who live with the resources that are so existential continue to be the poorest amongst us. So this is very, very important. And in order to achieve that, thought leadership is important. Showing that it can happen is important. But most important, taking these things to scale so they don't just become a story for one family, one community, one country, but they become a movement for all. And this is where partnerships matter if we want to take things to scale. So thank you very much for the leadership that you're showing, and thank you very much for everybody who has been generous with their ideas here. Thank you.
Thank you. Africans are known to be storytellers. And you would have heard from Max that he really tried to paint a picture in our mind in terms of how we can expand our thought leadership to translate in real tangibles, to touch people that are on the ground and really make a difference. But then we are also talking about scaling, because scaling is very important to lift people out of poverty into a world where we've been talking sustainable development since Rio. And today we're still talking about people that still live on less than $1 a day. And I think that is the bigger challenge that we are facing, that almost 50 years later, we're still talking about the same thing that we talked about. And I think that is a challenge, especially for this working group, as we talk about bioeconomy, that we then say within the G20 family, how do we raise the prospects of all these people out of poverty into a world where they also enjoy a better life? We've been inspired this morning by all the inputs that have been made. I've taken very much from what the keynote address gave us, Ms. Doreen. That was really very inspiring. And I think the stats that you presented are quite interesting. And it's also very encouraging that we hear that there's quite a lot of uptake of the targets in the Global Biodiversity Framework. There's also a translation of the metrics. And I think that if we were to interrogate further, that we then should then say, are we aligned, or are we taking forward the principles as outlined by the G20 presidency of Brazil? Because I think that is very important to build on that legacy. And then going forward is then to say, these metrics that we are taking forward within the SA presidency into the next presidency, can we take them forward so that we can then start to see real tangible benefits? So allow me to then express my sincere appreciation to all the speakers that we had this morning. The panelists also, we've had quite a number of solutions that are coming forward from what the panelists shared with us. The delegates that are in the room and participants for the insights and the energy you have brought to today's dialogue. I'm generally not a morning person. And I was telling Mr. Matibe this morning, when I left Johannesburg, I'm like, where are you? He's like, I'm already here. I'm like, I just hit the highways. She's like, no, you're going to be very late. I'm like, no, I hope I'll be there on time. And as the panelists were talking, it then struck me that, by the way, I'm not English first language. So remember, when someone speaks in English, I still have to process it into my own language. And I found some of them a little bit difficult. And then I also was thinking about all the things that I need to be processing, not only now, but throughout the day, because I have another meeting immediately after this session, and I still have to go back to the Biotrade Festival later this afternoon. And then it just shows you the amount of knowledge that one gathers in such a small space of time, and the need to then to process this into something that can then be usable. As a policy maker, obviously, is to take it forward into policy implementation. So from this morning, as we reflect on the key takeaways, there are several messages that stand out. One is around partnerships. And I think we can't overemphasize that. Even yesterday at the festival, the issue of partnerships was quite critical. Secondly, is that Africa has the capacity to lead. And Africa cannot afford to be taken to the doldrums or to the back line. Africa has to lead. Hence, this South African presidency of the G20, as I indicated earlier on, is also an African G20 presidency. But we also have the ability to specifically lead when it comes to biodiversity positive economic models. Mr. Matibe prefaced his opening with investments in ecological infrastructure. If the air we breathe, the water we drink, and our trees can't be producing, or we can't plant crops from the soils that we have, it means there is no life. So therefore, these investments that we're talking about in ecological infrastructure is very, very critical. And I'm happy that from the Climate Summit, the recognition of nature-based solutions, because I think the investment in ecological infrastructure forms the basis for what we call nature-based solutions, specifically in the African context. That will help us to achieve multiple objectives. One, food security, securing livelihoods, reversing and halting the loss of biodiversity, and certainly at the end of the day, realizing the climate dividends that we can have as South Africa, especially from an adaptation perspective. The other message that we had is that success depends on our ability to integrate financing, which is quite a big one, and really thankful to the insights that have been shared about the opportunities that lie in the financing space. And we know that there's quite a number of finance instruments out there. But from the perspective of the G20 presidency is about addressing the fact that there is no double dipping. That is one. Secondly, is that we realize the dividends of the investments that are being made, because in certain instances, these investments are made, but they don't touch the people. They only touch some of us here who are knowledge workers. But the people for whom these finances are meant for are not touched by that. And it's important that we bring that level of financing to the lowest level. Secondly, success also depends on policy. And I already indicated some of the insights that some of us gained as policymakers. Technology is a big one, especially in bioeconomy. When we talk about biotechnology, there's a lot of biotechnology that we are seeing at the Africa Biotrade Festival, as I indicated earlier on. It's quite critical that we deploy technology that are relevant and appropriate to local circumstances to be able to produce those products that are required. Then the other critical element is around indigenous knowledge, and we can't emphasize that. We have the benefit of sitting in this air-conditioned room, having nice breakfast, but yet people that have got the knowledge about the natural resources may not be in the room. How do we bring them to the table? How do we harness that knowledge to assist us in improving the work that we are doing into practical, actionable, and touchable pathways? And then the last message is that at the heart of this effort must be a strong emphasis on equity, on benefit sharing, and inclusion, ensuring that no community or stakeholder is left behind. Within the global biodiversity space, we talk about whole of society, whole of government. In the climate space, they talk about whole of economy approaches that we need to be adopting. So let's bring all those different voices to the table. So the outcome that we seek is ambitious and yet clear. So it's a clear, actionable roadmap for Africa's bioeconomy leadership that aligns with the G20 bioeconomy principles and those of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This will then position Africa not just as a passive beneficiary, but as an active shaper of the global bioeconomy agenda. Let us therefore treat today not as the conclusion of this dialogue, but as the beginning for collective implementation. Our call of action is to move beyond conversation into real projects, into investments, into measurable impacts that can transform the livelihoods and landscapes. So within this South African presidency of the G20, we therefore reaffirm our commitment to champion this work, to ensure Africa's voice is visible and influential in the G20 declaration, and to carry forward the aspirations that have been expressed here and else in other working groups and elsewhere within the stakeholder platforms that exist. Together, we can ensure that Africa's bioeconomy delivers for the people, it also delivers for nature and the planet, leaving behind a legacy that future generations, like Mr. Mative's grandchildren, will inherit with pride and purpose, but most importantly, ensuring that people and nature thrive. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Flora. Thank you very much. There's a photo, 2-minute photo. Please, let's just take, if it's not seen, it's not done, right? We need to show, we need to actually prove that we were actually gathered here. So very quickly, 5 minutes as we get entertained by the team. Thank you. Please come to the front. Let everyone have an opportunity. Yes. Yes, thank you. Good. Can you see us all? Yes. Yes, yes. Oh, okay. Students. Okay. I will clearly be also a photo director at this rate. Oh, please. Flora. Yes, please, there. Wait. Okay, wait. I also need to be in the photo.